We started recording the session that we do at 6:30 instead of the session we do at 8 because at 8 the base medrash is full and there's a lot of background noise, so therefore we do this one at 6:30. So we'll record it now. This is the 6:30 Daf Yomi session. And so today's Daf Yomi is Yevamos 99. So Tanya Rabbana, the Brayz taught Yesh Choetz Le'imo Misafek. There are certain conditions where certain circumstances where a person will end up doing chalitza with his mother out of a doubt, sometimes with his sister out of a doubt, and sometimes even with his father out of a doubt. Ketzad, imo v'isha acharis. Let's say the circumstance is that his mother and another woman. So basically, what happened is that there were these two women, one of whom each one gave birth to a son. And then, each one has a son. And then what happened was, these women got into some sort of place, maybe a cave, and they ended up giving birth to two more boys in a cave. But now these boys were mixed up. So therefore, let's say there's Rachel and Chana, and Rachel and Chana, who were married, Rachel was, let's say, married to Yaakov, and Chana was married to Reuven, and each of them had a son. Let's say son number one, Rachel's son was Yosef, and Chana's son was Chatzron. And now they have two more boys in the cave. And now Yaakov and Reuven die. And so now these two women are not related at all. Now comes along Yosef, who's the son of Rachel, and he marries Chana. No problem with that. He's allowed to. And Chana's son Chetzron comes along and marries Rachel. No problem. But now they die without any children. These women's husbands die without any children. So now they have an offspring. There's two more boys there. One of them could be the mother of one, and one of them could be the mother of the other. But they might also just not be. One of them could be the son of one or the son of the other, but we don't know. And so therefore, out of a doubt, out of a doubt, you do chalitza with each of the women, because the woman could be their mother, in which case they'd be exempt from chalitza or yibum, but the woman could just be their brother's wife, in which case it had to do yibum or chalitza. And so therefore, each one of them has to do chalitza with their mother out of a doubt. Some pointed out that this could also be disrespectful because they have to spit on the floor in front of the person who may, in fact, but that's not this case. But anyway, so the point is, we see from here that you would sometimes have to do a chalitza to your mother out of a doubt. Next, the case is they also sometimes have to do chalitza to their sister out of a doubt. Ketzad, imo v'isha acharis. Let's say a man and another woman. So there's two women. One of them is his mother. And they gave birth to two girls in a cave. So what's the scenario here? Here we go to Rashi. Imo sheyolda meish acher. A woman, his mother, she gave birth to him from another man, shenaso achar misas aviv, who she married, and then she got married after her father's death, after his father's death, and then she gave birth with another woman in the cave to two girls, and we don't know whose daughter belongs to whom. And then the two brothers who were from his same father, the mother of the son, before she married this boy's father had a different wife, which he had two sons from. And that they did not share a mother with their brother, but they did share a father. And they married these two girls, one of whom is their brother's sisters, but they're not related to her because they don't share a father or a mother. And so one of them married their sister, but we don't know which one. And then both of them fell before this boy whose mother both to these two girls, both of them fell before him for Yibum. So if he would know which one was his sister, he wouldn't do chalitza with her. But since he doesn't know, he does chalitza with both of them. That's the first way in which Rashi explains it. Well, that'll be enough for us. So let's just read this Gemara again. How can you have a doubt as to whether or not you married his sister? Kate said, Ima v'isha achara sheyaldu shtein kavos. Let's say his mother and another woman, they gave birth to two girls in a cave. And then his two brothers came, Vinasum, and he married them, Umeisu Banim, and then they died without any children. Well, I was reading the wrong case. So what's the case here? Kate said, and the brothers who were from a different mother came, and they married them, and then they died without any children. And then he does chalitza with both of them. He does chalitza to his sister out of a doubt. Now we have the next case, levito misafik. A person can do chalitza with his daughter out of a doubt. What's this scenario? Kate said, "Ishtov isha acheres sheyaldu shtein kevos b'machba." So let's say, so now we have his own wife, and another woman gave birth to two girls in a cave. So, and then what happened after that? And then their brothers died and married them. So what's this case? So Rashi tells us here again, Eishes Ruvain, Eishes Kohev. So there was Ruvain and Kohev, and they each have a wife, and they go into the cave and they give birth to two girls, and we don't know who belongs to whom, but one of them is Ruvain's daughter, one of them is Koev's daughter. And now their husbands come, meaning their brothers come, meaning to say Reuven's two brothers come and marry them. So now Reuven's brothers marry these two girls, and then they die. So therefore, Reuven has to do chalitza with both of them out of a doubt that maybe one of them was not his daughter. And therefore, one of them is for sure his daughter, but the other one is not his daughter. So he has to do chalitza with both of them to make sure that the one that's not his daughter is allowed to get married to somebody else. And so therefore, that's the case. That's how Rashi explains it. So that's the case here. So, but according to this scenario, his daughter is actually going to have to spit on the floor in front of her father. But since she's doing it for a mitzvah, the father is mochel on his cover. That's okay. So that's what we say. Let me just read it in the text of the Gemara. Uvito misafa ketzad ishtov eishes acheres, his wife and another woman, sheyaldu shtein kevos, gave birth to two girls in the cave. Ubao achayan, and now the brothers of Reuven, when brothers of Kohev come along, v'nasim, and marry off these two girls, marry them, umeisu b'obanim, and now they die without any children. Zecho etzel pito misafik, v'zecho etzel pito misafik. So in the case where both brothers had, so each one had one brother, and one of them married. So then Rashi brings out a second explanation that Reuven has one brother and Kohev has one brother whom each marry one of these two girls. But Rashi doesn't like that approach because that's, you're doing chalitza with your suffix daughter instead of your daughter out of a suffix. Anyway, we go on now. Tanya, you're a mayor, Omer, each isha, man and a woman, pamim shamoidin chamesh umos. Sometimes a man and a woman can give birth, or really a man can give birth to a woman can give birth to 5 separate categories of people stemming from them. 5 separate categories. Let's say there was a Jew who purchased a slave man and a slave woman from the marketplace. They already had 2 children. Who do they have? They had one of them converted. So now that one is a category of a ger, a convert. And so therefore we have nimtza echa ger v'echa oliklavim. One is a ger and one is an idolater. So far they've given birth to 2 categories of people. It's bilan l'shem avdus. Then the person who purchased these slaves immersed them in the mikvah for the purpose of becoming avid Kanani, like a quasi-Jew, a Canaanite slave. So then under that circumstance, and then they cohabitated. ve'eved, harekan ger kove ve'eved. So they give birth to a son, and that son is called an eved, a slave. He's a Canaanite slave. He's a quasi-Jew. So we have three categories: convert, idolater, and eved. Shikhr as a shikhr. Now the owner frees the woman. He cohabits with her, and that offspring is considered to be a mom's. That offspring is considered to be a mamzer. Excuse me. He frees the woman, and then the slave has relations with the slave man has relations with the woman. So now we have the fourth category, because since the slave had relations with the freed Jewish woman, that creates a mamzer according to this brisa. But now it's shechar shneim. But now he also frees the slave, and he marries the slave man to this, and the freed slave man marries the freed slave woman. We see in Zalazar can Gero become Evan Mamzer V'Yisrael. Now they create a full Jew. Umay Kamashon. So what's this Bryce even telling us? It's telling us it's telling us that if there's an idolater and a slave that have relations with a Jew, the offspring is a mamzer. Okay. Then Rabbanan Yesh Mocharas Aviv V'Hagbasi Moksuva. Now the Gemara is just telling us interesting peculiarities of the law. There are some people, Yesh Mocharas Aviv. There are some people who sometime a person might even have to sell their father in order to collect the money to pay his mother his ksuba. How can that be the case? Let's say Yisrael a Jew purchased a slave, Vishifra, and also a female slave, Minashuk. And then he purchased them both, the male slave and the female slave from the marketplace. And they had a slave, an idolater slave, which he did not purchase. Vishifra as a shifra, and he freed the female slave. Vinasa v'amad v'kasav kol mechasav v'vna. And so what happened after he freed the female slave? Now this man who freed her, he then decides to marry her, and then he stands up and he says, "I'm giving all my money to your son." But still, even though he gives all his money to her son, there's something that he can't give away, and that's the marriage bond, the ketubah that he has with her when he marries her. So now he dies, and the son has to pay the mother the ketubah. What does he do? So since the son was given his father was a slave, now he has to sell the father to pay the ketubah to the mother. So the Gemara says, "Well, Micah Mashal, why do we even care? Why are you telling us this case? What's the big significance of this case? Why are you even telling it to us?" The Gemara explains, "I'll tell you what we're learning from your Kua Rabbi Meir he." It's telling us the whole Chiddush that this brisa goes back to where we're beginning, where Meir said sometimes a man and woman give birth to 5 different classes, and it's telling us that we're following the position of Rabbi Meir that Rabbi Meir is of the position that metaltal mishtalim maksuva. Rabbi Meir says in Mesechas Ksuvos, we're going to get to that in around 3 weeks. And Rabbi Meir says that metaltal, even if it's a movable object, all your movable objects are also mortgaged to the ksuba. And so that's what this price is telling us, that even though the slave is a movable object, the slave is mortgaged to the ksuba. Or alternatively, a kamashmo and avda or else the Bryce is telling us, not like Rabbi Meir, but who says that slaves are like movable objects, but is saying that a slave is like real estate, and therefore it's mortgaged to the ksuba. Gemara says, okay, next Mishnah. A woman whose offspring got mixed up with her daughter-in-law's offspring, so it's her 2 grandsons get mixed up. No problem, because they all get along. But now the boys are older. And they each marry separate women. Umesu, and now these 2 boys die. So B'nei Akawa, so the daughter-in-law has other sons. So they are cholzin v'lo miyamin. So they have to do chalitza with, let's say, Reuven's wife and not Yibum, because maybe Reuven, who died, might have been their brother, but he also might have been, she was Safek Eshes Achav. Reuven might have been this woman who, this widow, she might have been, she's perhaps the wife of their brother, but Safek Eshes Achiyaviv, but she also might be the widow of their father's brother. And the widow of your father's brother does not fall to Yibum with you, because you're not allowed to marry. There's no Yibum there, and you're not allowed to marry. But if it was B'nai Azakena, let's say the woman, the sons of the grandmother die, and so now Ocholz and Omiyamin, they can do Chalitza or Yibum. Why? Shesafik Eshes Achiv, because this person who died, he might have been their brother's wife, in which case they're allowed to do Yibum or Chalitza ve'Eshes Ben Achiv. And he might have been the widow might have been married to the son of her grandson's brother. In which case, her sons are allowed to marry their niece, and it's not Yibum, but they're allowed to marry their niece. Meisu Aksher, but let's say it's the reverse case. Let's say who dies, not the mixed up kids, but the kids who we know for sure who their parents were. We know the sons of the daughter-in-law, i.e. the grandsons of the mother or the sons of the mother, we know specifically. Ataruvos l'bnei hazakena choltzim v'omiyamin. So now the mixed up kids, these two mixed up kids, we're not sure if they're the son or the grandson. Then they can only do chalitza and not a yibum, because it's possible that she was safek eshes achav, because this boy who died might have been his brother's wife, in which case you'd have to do yibum ve'eshes achiyav, but it also might have been their father's brother's wife, in which case you're not allowed to marry her and there's no yibum. And lemnei akawa, but what about to these tarubos, this mixed up kids? What do they do to the daughter-in-law's child? So now one of them, the first one does chalitza because maybe this is a woman who is one of the tarubos does chalitza first. And so therefore he's saying if this woman was married to my nephew, then I have to do chalitza with her because it can't hurt. But if I'm her brother, I'm allowing her to marry to the marketplace. And the second one does yibum miman of shach, because he says if you're my brother's wife, well then I'm doing yibum. And if you're my nephew's wife, well, you already had chalitza from the first brother, and so therefore now you're allowed to marry anybody, and I'm allowed to marry my nephew's wife. So that's the case there. So we say kohanes. Now we have the next case in the Mishnah. Kohanes shenis arev v'ada. Let's say you have a woman who was the daughter of a Kohen, and her offspring became mixed up with Vlad Shefasa, with the offspring of her maid. So you have a woman whose offspring became mixed up with the offspring of her maid. So under those circumstances, both of them are allowed to eat the truma, because a slave can eat from their master's truma. So either way, if it's an offspring of a Kohen or a slave of a Kohen, they can eat the truma. And they divide up, they take one portion in the granary, because you give one portion to the Kohen. And they're not allowed to become tamei for the dead body, because we're going to say that we have to be concerned that maybe he's a Kohen. And so therefore he can't become tamei for the dead body. And they can't marry any woman, bank shares, they can't marry any woman, because we're not sure if they're a slave, and then they can't marry the woman who the Kohen is allowed to marry, or they can't marry, they're not sure if they're Kohen, they can't marry the woman the slave is allowed to marry. So they can't marry a shifcha or a regular Jew. And so then now they grew older, and they freed each other. So then no sin nashim ru'yos l'kahuna. Then they're allowed to marry Jewish women, but only the women who the Kohen can marry, i.e., not a divorcee or a zona. The einan mitamen or mesim, and now they still not allowed to become tummy for a dead body because we're not sure if they're Kohen or not. But if they did become tummy, in self they don't get the 40 lashes because we're not sure if they're a Kohen or not. You can't give them the lashes out of a doubt. And they can't eat the truma because, again, we're not certain that they're kohanim. And if they do eat the truma, einon misham and karen v'chomesh, they don't have to pay back the kohen the principal plus 1/5, which is normally what you have to pay if you eat the truma. Ve'einon cholkin al goren, and they don't get to divide up they don't get to take the truma from the threshing floor. Umochrenes a truma, but if they do get truma, they could sell their truma. They can't eat it, but they could keep the money. And they don't get to divide up the sacred food of the temple because they're not for sure kohanim. We don't give them the sacred food that we give to the kohen from the temple, the chazan and the shok. And we don't, but yet we don't take it away from them. We don't. If they have it, we don't take it away. If there was. So kadashim means we don't give them the firstborn animal or the cherem that was given to the kohen. But if they have it, if somebody gave them the bechor or their cherem, we don't take it away from them. It remains theirs. Because everyone can say, I'm a kohen. I'm a kohen, they could say. That's what Rashi explains. Tosus doesn't like Rashi's pshat. We'll leave that for another time. But upeturim min azroa min al-chaim min akiva. They also don't have to give the Zroa, Chaim, and the Kiva, which are the gifts that are usually given to the Kohen. Ubechoro, and his firstborn animal, that he has to graze till gets a blemish, and then notice of Chumrei Kohen and Chumrei Yisrael. And also, you give this person, you're not sure if he's a Kohen or Yisrael, you give him the stringencies of both a Kohen and a Yisrael. It doesn't say that he's not allowed to do the Birkas Kohanim. So some say from here that a Safek Kohen is allowed to do the Birkas Kohen. Okay, we say Meizu HaKsherim. It said in the Mishnah that if the Ksherim are the ones who died, what's wrong with these? We just don't know if their mother is their mother or their grandmother. So why do we call them Psulin? So Amar Papa Emo Meizu Havadain. Okay, change the text. Once the certain ones died, meaning to say not the Ksherim, to take away that text. Then we said that we learned in the Mishnah that it said in the Mishnah. Let me just go back to the text of the Mishnah. It said the taruvos of the Bnei Akawa, one of them, the mixture of the children to the sons of the daughter-in-law. First you do chalitza and then yibum. Dafka mechatz rather yivume. First you have to do chalitza. And then Yibum, but the first one of the Terubis that comes along, he can't do Yibum because if it's possible that she's not his brother's wife, it might be his nephew's wife, and then the Kapaga be Yevamos Shuk, then he's having relations with somebody who's Yevama to the Shuk. So therefore, you first have to have you first must have his daughters, his nephews. The other Tarubas do chalitza in case he was married to her brother, in case she was married to his brother. Kohenish and Asari. Let's say you have the daughter of or the woman who's married to a Kohen, her offspring got mixed up, so then they get one portion on the granary. Of course, they get one portion. Obviously, they get one portion. Why wouldn't you think they get one portion? So the Gemara says, "Ema chelek ke'echad." That only when they come together to get it would they get one portion. But if they come together, Rashi said, but if they come on their own, you don't give it to them because at this point we're of the position that you don't divvy up the truma to a slave unless his master is with him. Because why? Because we're worried that people are going to think, oh, he's a Kohen, and they're going to elevate him to the lineage of a Jew. So the Gemara says, Tanan Command Amar. So our mission must be like the position Ein Cholkin Truma LaEved, that we don't give truma on the granary to the Eved, to the slave, unless his master is with him. And that's the position. Titania, we learned in the price, you don't give the truma to the slave unless the master is with him. That's the position of Rabbi Yehuda, whereas Rabbi Yossi says, Yachal Sheyomar, I might think that he'll say, he's able to say, Im Kohen ani Tanui b'shvil. That's me. If I'm a Kohen, give it to me on my own. Im Eve Kohen ani, and if I'm a slave of a Kohen, Tanui b'shvil Rabbi. Give it to me on account of my master. So that's the dispute in the Brisa, whether or not a slave can get it on his own. So one says that he cannot. The other one says he could say, yeah, he give it to me either because I'm a slave or because I'm a Kohen. Either way, I'm entitled to it. In the place of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that you don't give it to an Eved on its own, that's because in his place, if they saw somebody getting the truma in the field, they immediately assumed he was a Kohen, and they would be malam for lineage. Whereas in the place of Rabbi Yossi, they wouldn't be malam the truma for the yochsin. So the Gemara says, Tanya Rabbi Elazar Tzaddik miyamai lo eidosi el edus echad. My whole life, Rabbi Elazar Tzaddik says they only gave one testimony. In my whole life, I only testified about one thing, and it didn't go so well. Because what happened? And basically, I saw this person getting the truma. I said he's a Kohen, and they elevated him and they made him this slave a Kohen. Gemara says, do you really think that they elevated this person to become a Kohen? We learn elsewhere in the Gemara, this is the Gemara Chulin, that even the animals of the tzaddikim are not able to, God does not allow anything bad to happen to them. Tzaddikim atzman lo kol shkem. For sure, it's tzaddik, like Rabbi Elazar and Yaakov, Hashem's not going to allow him to give false testimony. And what's example of an animal of a tzaddik Hashem doesn't allow anything bad? This is like the donkey of Rabbi Pinchas ben Yair, in Chulin Zayin Amud Aleph, where it says that this animal did not want to eat food that was untied. So Ella Ema Bikshu Aros Evel Kuna Alpi. They wanted to elevate the slave to the Kohen on my basis, and Chaza Ba'asr Rabbi Yossi, because Rabbi Elazar and Yaakov saw this slave getting Rabbi Elazar bar Tzaddik saw the slave getting the truma in the place of Rabbi Yossi, but where they don't, where they say there's no problem, they give it to the slave. Also, Rabbi Yehuda, and he went and testified in the place of Rabbi Yehuda that this person got the truma, so they thought he was a Kohen, but then they stopped it. So the Tosfos writes Nira the low garis way that we don't have as our version. Now the animals of the tzaddikim cannot make a mistake. Says because this prohibition, this concept that you were saying that something bad is not even going to happen to a tzaddik, that only applies to eating something wrong. Hashem is not going to allow a tzaddik to eat something wrong, but it doesn't talk about something else messing up. You can have other mistakes that you made, and so therefore they take out this girsa. So that's the point that actually was made by Rabbeinu Tam and Sefer Yashar, and he says Eila Ariach Khan here. It says in the Tosfos, don't go into great detail here, but we're supposed to look at Tosfos in Shabbos 12b and Tosfos and other Tosfos around the Shas. But that's the point that Tosfos makes. Okay, anybody have any questions? I'm happy to address them.